I can say without a word of a lie that had I not met you and been able to work through that, I would probably be doing something else now.
First, this is September, October 2019. In that period, we did 2.3 billion, with a B, billion worth of volume for the mortgage industry. We were pumping out bookings every couple of minutes, and certainly home loans towards the last 2 weeks of that period, 3 weeks. We were seeing those loans being processed every 3 minutes. So the program just works. It's become a big part of the new Yabba, social media and digital marketing system we now provide. There's a Jupiter module there and a Pluto module and a couple of other relationships. Now, if there's a good chance, we didn't mention Daniel's last name. We don't mention last names. We're protected by an NDA. We have recorded this on video. There is a good chance that we've blurred out your face, so we might get you to sign a release to the NDA that you signed.
That's fine.
Back a long time ago. So when you came to us, Dan, and I was talking before, and do you mind if I retell the story a little bit?
Absolutely not.
Okay, I remember that phone call distinctly, partly because I had terrible reception and I had to walk out the front of my house and it was very dark, and it was just a strange call. Anyway, I could tell from your voice, I could sense the frustration. I could hear that perhaps you were struggling with different opportunities that you wanted to introduce to your business, but perhaps didn't quite know how. Now, you'd come off one of those, bullshit programs that you'd bought, like I think it was a Backpack or Mastery or something. I don't remember, but you mentioned that to me and said, look, it's just not working. Orientated towards Facebook, and I said, look, we'll take it slowly. And I remember saying this distinctly: we'll take it slowly. The first thing we'll do is, at the time, we ran an NPS survey, which was running back through your database. And I ran that for about 10 days. We're talking about this afternoon.
So let me keep going with the story. So
okay,
we'll take it back a little bit. At the time, I was interested in learning more about how to position my business through social media marketing. I signed up with a company that promised, a gazillion Facebook ads, 17,000 leads a month, and the system just seems too hard to use. It was almost like my money was just going to line somebody else's pockets, and I was getting absolutely nothing back in return. The way that the universe works is that at the time you sent me an email. Now, I'd never met you before. I'd never spoken to you before. But you sent me an email that was very broker-centric. So, and I did. I called because at the time my website wasn't probably up to spec, and I was interested in that side of the business. And I tell you what, you put my mind at ease straight away, Martin, because I understood that there are companies out there that deal specifically with brokers. Now, as you know, and we've been working together now for 3 years. Brokers are a funny animal. We're very we're very business orientated, but at the same time we have to be relationship orientated. And building relationships with brokers is paramount, because that's what we do with our clients. So to build that relationship, I can't tell you how many emails I received from you in the first week. I must have received 30 or 40 emails, and each one of them was a novel. And it was just the volume and the amount of information that you were prepared to give to me, someone you'd never met and only spoken to once or twice, spoke volumes to what you believe you could do for my business. And you hooked me straight away, because nobody does that. And over the last 3 years, we've done a couple of... 2 years. 2 years. Sorry, 2 years. Yeah, sorry. So we've done a couple of programs where I've given you my database, and you've contacted all my old clients, and you've worked through that. And the amount of business I got out of that was phenomenal. It was brilliant. And so, people say to me, well, why do you use a guy in Sydney? Because I'm a Melbourne-based broker. I said, well, I wouldn't use anybody else. I can't, because the amount of stuff that he gives me and the amount of business that I get from that is just phenomenal.
Yeah. Too, it's nice of you to say so. And first of all, the 30 or 40 emails, I don't want people to think I was spamming you, because
No,
what
you
I did,
weren't.
and I remember this with you, and I just sent you basically a library of content we had. And I remember
did.
saying, I'll have to send them individually because they're all quite large. So I sent you all these emails one after the other, and just included basically a library of content, which is now essentially retired. A lot of that information is now archived into different manuals and booklets and things like that. Now,
But it showed, just before you go, I mean, what it did is it showed me intent to work with me, because nobody gives that volume of information away. And when I say, 30 or 40 emails, it didn't feel like spam. What it felt like was that you were trying to become invested in my business to help me to succeed. And that's primarily what I mean by you gave all this stuff for free just because you understood the broker market and you understand where we're coming from. We're different to everybody else. So
yeah, and for those listening, we do continue to give a lot of that sort of stuff away for free. Just give us a call and we'll send you whatever information you need. We take the approach, and just to expand on that, we take the approach that we provide an education. That these are the same principles we advocate for mortgage brokers. If you give people what they need and what they want, what they're looking for, what they're craving for, if you give them pain relief, general pain relief, rather than just these little vitamins and everything else, it paves a pathway through to sort of creating that relationship. But certainly we give away for free what other people are charging $10,000, $12,000, $13,000 for. In fact, our free 1-800-FUNNELS product is more powerful than any paid product on the market. And it's only a recent product, the evolution of 1-800-FUNNELS, but it is free. Now, I ran this NPS survey for you, and it was based on the experience with you that led us into a program that was very broadly, it was participated by a large number of our brokers, and you were one of them, but you're one of our favourite guys to deal with for reasons I'll come to talk about. Initially, we used to conduct the NPS survey, which was a Net Promoter Score survey. It was a reason to make contact, and where we could, we'd encourage people to give you a call on the telephone, particularly if people this is a score of 0 to 10, there are 3 or 4 questions there. We always wanted to get a little bit of feedback, and we'd always say to people, if they gave you a 9 or 10, how many people have you referred? That was presented as a question. And more often than not, it was, maybe 1 or 2 or 0. But we always wanted those people to talk to you. We always wanted those people to make contact with you. So we'd line up the phone call. And after I did these calls myself. I always like to do those sorts of calls myself, because it gives me an understanding of the people that I will be working with. It positions me to understand your business. And the only way to understand your business is to engage with your clients. So I was conducting these NPS surveys, which I had done dozens and dozens and dozens of times before. And everyone liked you. You had a massive database, large, like well over 1,000. Well, I'm not going to give the number out, but it was well over 1,000. And everyone liked you, which was bizarre, because that never happens. Everyone's always got a horror story to tell about their mortgage broker, and that never came up with you. So after a couple of days of these, I only did a couple of hours every single day, I gave you a call. And again, I had mobile phone reception. I recall the spot on my front fence where I was sitting, and I said to you, mate, don't pay us anything. So just don't do anything. Just bear with me, and please just place your trust in me, because I'm going to introduce a program into the company where we're going to look after guys like you in a different way. And that's the Jupiter program, which is a database clearing program. And we've operated in that way ever since. And that was, we called people for the purpose of getting you on a phone, and we relegated the NPS stuff to email where it was better suited. And that was 6 months after what we call the first 3 months, or the first 6 weeks. So the NPS survey was essentially set at 7 or 8 months, which is how we continue to operate that particular program today. So I called you up and said, mate, just bear with us, please. And you said, okay. I remember a little bit of reluctance, but I could tell, mate, when I was talking to you, seriously, I could hear your frustrations at the time. I don't know what you were going through. I'm not going to ask specifically, but I could tell that you're at this juxtaposition in your professional life where you were maybe at some sort of crossroads, and maybe you can expand on that, because I don't know your frame of mind at that point in time. But leading on from that, I got Paul in, I got Kate in, I got Rebecca in. I got a couple of girls in to help with these Jupiter phone calls. We introduced it to you, I think, maybe even first. This is October 2019. In that period, we did 2.3 billion, with a B, billion worth of volume for the mortgage industry. We were pumping out bookings every couple of minutes, and certainly home loans towards the last 2 weeks of that period, 3 weeks. We were seeing those loans being processed every 3 minutes. So the program just works. It's become a big part of the new YABA, social media and digital marketing system we now provide. There's a Jupyter module there and a Pluto module and a couple of other relationship-based modules. But from that program, we reignited your database and we set it on fire. All these cold leads, some of them were 20 years old. Some of them were 20 years old, but they still remembered you.
That's it's quite amazing actually, because mortgage broking is a relationship-based business.
It is.
And without the relationships, then there's really no business. It's just transactional. And as a mortgage broker, we always aspire to not be transactional. We always aspire to have that relationship with our clients, so that not only do we look after a loan for a first home buyer, but their second home, their third home, their kids' homes, their cars, their whatever else needs to be done. And that can only be done through relationships. You mentioned when we first sat down in 2019. Look, to be honest, that was not the best time for me. And the reason I say that is because after 20 years just on 19 years in this industry, like a lot of brokers, I was just burnt out. It was all getting too difficult, and there was changes upon changes upon changes. You know, we'd gone through the GFC, we'd gone through a massive upheaval in the way that we transact the loans. The relationship stuff still rang true, but there was a movement away from face-to-face to a lot of online. So there was a lot happening in the industry, and I was just burnt out. And I can say without a word of a lie that had I not met you and been able to work through that, I would probably be doing something else now. And that's primarily because it all got too hard. Now, you might say, well, you know, things haven't changed that much. They've actually got more difficult. But I think what's happened is that we've now got the tools through the programs that we use through you guys to make it a little bit simpler, a little bit easier, and just take one issue off the table so that we can focus on the things that are important, which is client relationships.
And that's what we've worked on. I want to make the point that we gave you one of our early websites. You're just about to get the UBU conditional website installed, which will change your life. Honestly, I'm so looking forward to introducing Yabba to your business. Brilliant. Because it's just going to... You're not going to want to write any loans. You're going to want to sit there all day and just play with the social media modules and all sorts of things.
Over a few
I've mentioned this to him 10 times. At least, and that is, of all the brokers we've ever taken on, we've taken on hundreds of brokers, right? And in the first kind of conversation I have with them, I say, let's record some videos, let's get some stuff, because we kind of have a requirement for 4 videos on the front page, particularly with the new website, which is conditional because it has escalating and cycling content and so on. We like 4 videos because it's compelling and it creates a call to action. Now, in the history of Belief Media, you are the only guy to have ever gone out and actually created them, and they were brilliant, right? We sat down there and we watched them, right? We watched them beginning to end and came out the other end, and we were smarter perhaps having taken part in that. And I remember saying to Dom at the time, who was not quite back into Belief Media but was on the periphery, and I said, mate, these are great. I said, this guy is wasted talent. Since then, you haven't done a great deal of video, but that will change. And on the basis of that, we've introduced some other programs that I'll talk about in a second, because we don't introduce programs to those brokers that don't introduce the proper relationship-based mechanisms within their own organisation. Because if we introduce a relationship to someone with a real estate agent, a financial planner, an accountant, or whatever, that business expects the broker to be at the top of their game. And a lot of that has to do with how they represent their brand, because how you represent yourself is then going to reflect upon them. 100%. So going back to this first Jupyter program, that returned a lot of volume, right? It reignited the database. It reconnected you with a lot of clients you hadn't spoken to in a long time. And like a lot of the clients we spoke to for a whole bunch of different brokers. Some of them were even on their way to see a broker. We caught people and they're on their way. I guess the sample size of contacts we had, that sort of thing was going to happen. Other people were were viewing homes with real estate agents. We got people at just the right time. Now, we talked about a couple of things earlier, and I might bring them up in a moment, such as the clawbacks and the best interest duty and so on, and how that's impacted upon your operation thus far. But I want to make the point that you came to us and your expectation early on was Facebook ads.
Yes.
And we haven't run a single Facebook ad.
No.
Maybe in 3 months. I'm thinking 3 months for you is where that will start to return really positive results. But at the moment, we're still running through some relationship stuff. You're in Sydney now. It's the reason I get to meet you for the very first time. You're in Sydney because you've come up to essentially meet one of the guys that we've introduced you to, who has introduced hundreds of leads into your business. And that itself has had a positive impact on your operation, yeah?
Absolutely, it has. So again, just I guess giving the listeners a little bit more of an understanding of where I sit. I mean, as a broker of 20 years, we've got our own referral partners that we've dealt with for a very long time. But I guess a key to dealing with belief media was to expand on that referral partner network and get good people who are able to refer good business. So we've come up to Sydney. We've met a few really, really good people who we're going to embark on programs with to make sure that we can help lots and lots and lots of people. Now, whether that's first home buyers, whether it's investors, whatever it might be, just good people doing good business. That's primarily it.
Okay, so based on just a recap on one of the conversations we had just a couple of hours ago at the bar. It became clear through that conversation that, the real estate agent there we were there with did say that what he expects of those brokers he partners with is that the follow-up take place, that the relationship be built, and that they support their business in an appropriate and professional way. And there was no talk throughout that entire discussion of kickbacks and remuneration and commission and all those sorts of things that typically take place. Actually, I lie. There was one small talk, but I'm the one that introduced it. But in general, I think most brokers need to appreciate that once you start to introduce commissions to the mix, it becomes a race to the top as opposed to the consumer-facing stuff where it's a race to the bottom in terms of rates and so on. It's a race to the top because there's always going to be a broker that will pay back the real estate agent more than you. And as you do so, the quality drops off because as people pay more commission, they have less time to apply to those clients. And that's just important to mention, I think.
So I guess I'll throw my 2 cents worth in there and say that the relationships that we've built with our referral partners, be they accountants, financial planners, real estate agents, property marketers, we generally don't pay a commission to them because we both parties recognise that without the other person, the client, the consumer, the customer doesn't get the very best benefit they can. So commissions cloud judgments, and it makes it very difficult to do good business when the focus is on the outcome for the referrer. So, brokers will quite often offer up 20%, 30%, 40%. I've even heard of 50% of their commission. That doesn't allow us to do our job because the commissions are relatively skinny anyway, and if we're giving half away, then that doesn't allow us the financial wherewithal to put people into our business that are going to look after their clients well. But on top of that, you're right, it's a race to the top, so there's always going to be another broker who's going to come in and offer them more. And to be honest, as a professional, I don't know that I would want to be basing my referrals on who's going to give me the most commission. I would much rather base my referrals on who is going to give my clients the best deal, who is going to give them the long-term best relationships for them. A lot of that comes back to best interest duties. Where is the best interest of my client lying? Is it with the broker that's going to give me the highest commission, or is it the one that's going to give my clients the best relationship, the best outcome for them? And I think that's where commissions cloud judgments.
So let's talk about just briefly. I don't want to talk volumes. I know we had a discussion about a month ago, and we said where are we headed this year, and I was basing it on the growth we've experienced since we first met, and I think at that point it was about 600% or something. And I said, no, let's go for 1,000%. I figured if we can get 700% growth, then we can get to 1,000, and so on. Now, it's a tricky question to ask because we don't know what the next sort of couple of months holds. There are a whole bunch of variables in that equation, but we're still looking towards, seeing significant growth through the year, putting on some additional staff and growing your operation, introducing more relationship programs such as an enhanced version of Edge where we, in fact, we've talked about belief perhaps inheriting some of that responsibility until you put on the appropriate staff and so on. But this is still part of your long-term plan?
Part of that is also doing it in a timely manner. So the plan for the next 12 months is to, expand our staff to be able to look after our client and benefit them by giving them the time and the experience to be able to get them what they want. Now, you might say, well, a product is a product is a product, but really it comes down to what is the very best product for that particular client at that particular time, and that takes research. And if we're researching, we're not writing loans. And if we're not writing loans, then we don't have the wherewithal to be able to do the research. So by putting staff on it, what it does is it allows us the time to actually invest in that relationship with that client to make sure that they're a client for life, because we've looked after them, we know what they want, we've done the research, we've done everything we need to do to make sure that what we're offering is the best we can find. And it just takes time, and therefore it takes staff to be able to take some of that pressure off.
And I can't wait to see where you take the operation.
Whichever bank it is, it's their job to bring people into the branch to write loans. On the flip side, it's also we also look after 65% as a broker collective. We look after 65 to 70% of the overall loans originated in this country. So they're at odds with each other, because on the one hand, we write 70% of their business, but on the other hand, they're trying to drag people into a branch. And I guess that has a lot to do with the cashback offers that are being offered at the moment, which to me are, anti-competitive, because they really do take the broker out of the equation, and they almost force clawbacks because it's so easy to refinance, and there's a benefit, a very real tangible dollar benefit to the client, and that just doesn't make any sense.
It's not just the cashback, though, it's the products themselves that evolve. Banks are competing against each other, therefore the products become more competitive. The rates are lower, the features associated with those products and so on evolve. So, you're absolutely right. And on the basis of that, now here's a question for you, and it's the question I posed in this thing I wrote on our website. And there's no clear answer to it, so if you just look at me and shrug your shoulders, that's perfectly acceptable, because I don't know the answer. I spent about an hour on the phone with my lawyer yesterday trying to get a clear answer. His response was, the banking industry is bleeped. That was his response, because he believes that he's a conspiratorial nut. He believes that the banking industry itself has worked with the legislators to try and create this environment that forces brokers into extinction. Now, I'm not subscribing to that necessarily, but that's certainly a product of what we see. He's just taken the conspiratorial approach. It's nuts. Anyway, so here's the question. Now, in the majority of cases, all that legislation that shrouds, best interest duty and creates the obligation for brokers to act and behave in certain ways, best interest duty does not cease at settlement. So you're obligated to then provide clients with a better product when a better product presents itself, or if a client finds itself in a particular type of hardship because the product no longer meets their needs, you have to then go and refinance them, despite the fact that it's in their clawback period. So what's your response to that? Like, how can brokers... the cycle that I've just described basically it describes the broking industry as a non-profit organisation that facilitates loans but doesn't actually get paid anything. So what's your response to that? How do you think brokers should behave within that clawback period?
I would normally shrug my shoulders and go, I've got no idea.
Yeah.
But I think brokers have an obligation from a relationship point of view to maintain that relationship even after settlement. Now, it is incredibly difficult to do that. I mean, you've got an awesome system that allows that to happen, and it allows us to better control that after settlement process. But 99.9% of brokers don't do that because it's just too difficult. I'll use the example of myself. I mean, as a 20-year broker in our industry, it would be detrimental to not only my business but also to carrying on business if I spent all my time going back on those clients that I knew 20 years ago that I put into loans that may be in varying degrees of completion. There is a need to maintain that relationship, and I guess that's when you find out a lot of the information about clients. Some of them, my clients, are some of my really good friends, and we built up that really strong bond where, should something happen, they're going to ring me straight away and say, well, okay, this has happened, and then we can deal with that. But long term, unless you have some sort of a trigger or some sort of system in place to make sure that you do maintain those relationships, it all gets far too hard. Now, I'll use the example of today being and of the last 6 months where with the explosion of property prices and the explosion of loans attached to those property increases, COVID, and a whole lot of other things that have happened over the last 6 to 12 months, our time has, I guess, in some way been taken away from those clients and maintaining those relationships because we're just so busy dealing with new clients that we just don't physically have the time to deal with the older clients. And again, that's where something like a trigger from a software that you guys have allows us to make sure that we absolutely maintain that and do our best to make sure that that our clients are always looked after.
Bernard from Blank Finance in Kate McIntyre's advisor article made the same point, and that is that brokers don't have time anymore. It's the one point that I disagreed with, and as you've just explained, you can put digital measures in place. In our case, it's the Edge post-settlement software to mitigate the damage that's done in the post-settlement relationship. In fact, I'll go a little bit off the rails here and just remind people that email is not a substitute for post-settlement care. Email is not a substitute for post-settlement care. People get email and they delete it. They rarely read it and they don't care, and it's not personal. We really do have to maintain that schedule of contact. And certainly the post-settlement program, while it has it's as close as you get to clawback insurance because we're developing a relationship. But in developing that relationship, and I will go through this for those that don't have any idea what Edge is, first payment, second payment, or settlement, first payment, second payment, third payment, and possibly the equivalent of the fourth, which equates to, if you're paying monthly, no one pays monthly, but 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, and then various intervals over the course of that clawback. You mentioned 18 months is 18 months to 2 years is when you lost your deal, which resulted in a clawback, and that's very, very typical. It's an extremely typical time frame. So why then wouldn't we call everyone that is encroaching upon that time frame at 16 months, 14 months? And Edge is designed based on the type of loan that these people are taking, and it schedules that contact appropriately. So we always maintain that connection and relationship. So if that client does gravitate towards a new product, at least we'll be writing it. We'll be writing our own demise. I call it a self-inflicted sort of gunshot wound, essentially. We just take the hit because it's worth doing that over losing the client. So Edge is our post-settlement software. The information is on beliefmedia.com.au. So And I still think we're going to get that, 1,000% growth, even if you. I'm probably more optimistic than you are.
And I don't think 1,000% is out of the question. I really don't.
Keep in mind, the software is just there to support the human operation.
Absolutely.
It provides digital mechanisms, and go to our website and check it out to get a full appreciation of what it does. But I really do, especially at this point in the evolution of the industry, I do feel like relationships are, some people say, less and less important. We've said that before as well. We're hoping for the best and planning for the worst in terms of relationship-based businesses, because we give our clients now, and you will be one of them, a comparison website, which might otherwise cost 10, 20, 30, 40, sometimes 50 grand, because we feel the need to introduce that technology. So if the industry, or if the consumer market does migrate in that direction, at least brokers will be equipped with the necessary tools to take advantage of that market. And it also opens up a new market that exists now that are attracted to that sort of product.
Martin, also.
Broad digital marketing. You're right. You are right at this point in time. I look back on that though. See, I'm in exactly the same position as you, because that's what I want to believe. Honestly, truly, that's what I want to believe our business is predicated upon, introducing these relationship-based businesses early, even before Facebook marketing, because 90% of the people we get to us don't need Facebook marketing. You didn't need Facebook marketing when you came to us. You really didn't. I think you needed just someone to help you work in your business, to introduce a few new fresh ideas and everything else, and I think that applies a lot of the time, right? Now, to move on from that, the examples, we all hear them over and over and over again. The story of Netflix going into sell themselves to Blockbuster for virtually nothing, and Blockbuster laughing them out of the room. Kodak inventing its own demise. Ridiculous comments made over and over by these people that made predictions that just were completely...
The buggy whip company.
Yeah, all these sorts of things. We can't predict the future. We like to believe that something's going to happen, but we can't let personal bias get in the way. So whilst we believe the same way you do, we're still going to introduce the technology because, like I said, A, it takes advantage of the market that already exists, and B, it's like this additional insurance policy you can fall back on. Let's say that there was this huge consumer shift towards comparison-based services, and I can't see it now. I can't see it myself, but who's to say that it doesn't happen? So I agree with you. I really do. But like I said, hope for the best and plan for the worst.
Look, they all go hand in hand. There's not one size fits all. Relationship marketing goes alongside social marketing, social media marketing. They have to work together, and we follow the consumer trends. So as a trend moves in one direction, we follow that, and as it moves in another direction, we follow that. But wherever it is and whatever it is, it's all about the relationship with the client first and foremost.
Yep, and you've got us on your journey as well, so you're destined for greatness.
Destined for greatness.
All right, mate. Thanks so much for talking to us. I know this isn't something you normally do. It was thrust upon you, and honestly, after a big lunch and a few beers, it's a struggle to get through, isn't it?
Martin, it's been an absolute pleasure. It's great to finally meet you.
You too.
It's been an interesting 2 years dealing with over phone, email, and everything else. But now that I've met you, I can confidently say that we're going to do a lot more business together.
Brilliant. Thanks for staying.
Thank you.